What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew, and today I want to pick through a pretty big topic when it comes to the AFL right now, and that's the future of Christian Petracca, who emerged through several reports over the course of the last week, and Tom Morris has kind of been the one leading the way here. And now let's acknowledge Tom Morris for the sort of person he's been over the past. Not a great one. And then kind of hone in, I guess, on the journalistic component that he brings to the table here. And this is some reporting around Christian Petracca and his future. The report went out late last week and has kind of been doubled down upon by Tom in the last 24 hours that suggests that Christian Petracca, Melbourne's best player, arguably at full fight the best player in the competition, wants out. He's disgruntled. He's unhappy. He's unhappy with the way he's been treated by the club, and he's looking for a new home. And while the Geelong Football Club has publicly not yet been linked to Christian Petracca, I'm sure, like any club worth its salt, they're going to do their due diligence, and they're going to suss out whether it is at all possible to bring in the best player in the competition right now. And so I want to explore the possibilities. I want to work out how Melbourne has gotten here. I want to work out how it might be possible for Geelong to bring him in. What sort of machinations need to take place for Christian Petracca to become a Cat? And then we can kind of discuss some of the competition that might be vying for Christian as well. So let's kind of begin by talking about how Christian got to this point. Now, as I touched on a moment ago, there's been some reporting from Tom Morris that talks about how Christian's been pretty disgruntled in the last little while. After he got injured, and it was obviously a very severe injury, he got some time to go away. Now, there was some circumstances around this that weren't conveyed to the playing group. Not by Christian, but by the club. They weren't like, it's not Christian's job to tell everyone, hey guys, I'm leaving because Y, X and Y. He's communicated to the club, and the club is then empowered to communicate in a way that they deem most appropriate to the other players. This is why Christian Petracca needs to travel. This is why he needs to get away. This is why we're going to see him on TikTok a lot. He's a TikTok fiend for anyone that's unfamiliar. And it sounds like, through some of Tom Morris's reporting, that none of this really happened. And so Christian Petracca started to become on the receiving end of some negativity from the players who didn't have the full story. And so that kind of left a bad taste in the mouth. We then hear, and I guess these are things that are kind of alluded to in Tom Morris's reporting, but not necessarily specifically stated. We obviously know that there's been some cultural concerns with the club, whether you want to talk about players like Clayton Oliver, who's obviously had some of his dramas, but who knows, could well be a Cat in the future. If we want to talk about a whole range of other players at the Melbourne Football Club who've been in a little bit of trouble lately and had some difficulties. It's something that Christian doesn't want anything to do with and is, interested in leaving because of it. There's a range of different circumstances bubbling along under the surface that seem to be leading to Christian's desire to leave the club. And the fact of the matter is that right now he is silent. And so I want to see this become a reality. So how do we do it? Who are we up against? How does a deal to get Christian Petracca into the Geelong Football Club happen? Because it's a really difficult one to imagine, I think, for myself and a lot of people watching and listening to this right now. Because, it's a fair premium that Christian Petracca is on. He signed a 5-year deal. It's many millions of dollars. He would presumably enter the Geelong Football Club as the most paid, the highest paid player at the club. And so we've got to move mountains a little bit to make this possible. So let's first talk about the competition. Now, it seems like he wants to remain in Melbourne. And I would presume, being the elite player that he is that he's constantly wanting to chase success, and he wants to be there or thereabouts with whatever club he chooses to join. And so you can probably rule out the Tigers. You can probably rule out North Melbourne. Maybe you rule out Essendon. And sorry, that's a little bit of my bias speaking, but of course, 20 years, no success, missed the finals again after another collapse. It's possible, like if they're trying to chase the amazing king or queen piece on their chessboard, then he's of course one that you go for. But I sense he wouldn't necessarily be interested there. But then there's a whole raft of teams that would be of significant interest to Christian. whether you want to talk about Geelong and the Dogs, who are kind of the top Victorian teams on the ladder right now, if you want to talk about some of the other clubs that have been kind of linked to him so far. And apparently there's already been conversations with some clubs out there, Carlton, Collingwood, all of these clubs have been tied to him. Hawthorn is not backwards in coming forwards these days. And all of these clubs would understandably want to move mountains to get him. And so it makes it a really difficult prospect for Geelong to get in there and make a play. And why do I think that's difficult? Well, it's not because of finances, I don't think. We've got a list profile is a really fascinating one right now. And it's obviously what has allowed the Bailey Smith conversations to go on. And I believe Bailey Smith may well happen no matter what occurs here. But then to bring in a second player, whether it's Christian, who's obviously been discussed quite a bit, or whether it is a Clayton Oliver, who's also been linked to Geelong a little bit in the last week or so, and kind of in the weeks prior as well. I just have to wonder how we make this happen, because I think financially it's not necessarily a concern. Our list profile, the makeup of the players who are consuming the most money are our older players for the most part. Think Tom Hawkins, who's already retiring. Think Zach Tui, who's pretty close to the end, if not this season. Mitch Duncan's in a similar boat. Reece Stanley's in a similar boat. Patrick Dangerfield's in a similar boat, though doing an incredible job as leader. Tom Stewart's in a similar boat, but again, doing an incredible job as the vice captain. There's some wonderful, experienced players who command a lot of money. Jeremy Cameron's up there. And, he's going to be getting towards the tail end of his contract soon. Now, I don't know whether that was front-loaded or back-ended or how he got there, but he commands a lot of money. There's a lot of older, experienced players who are either about to depart the club in the next 12 months or up for their next contract and could be in a position to take a bit of a haircut. And so I think on the financial side, Geelong can manage probably to bring in both a Bailey Smith and a Christian Petracca if the other side of the equation can be balanced. And I think for Geelong, this is the really hard part, is how do we bring in a Christian Petracca? How do we bring in a Clayton Oliver? How do we bring in either of these blokes with our draft hand or with our tradable options? Because I don't think we have that many tradable options right now. We know Melbourne needs key forwards. But with Tom Hawkins leaving, I'm sure the club is not keen to move on Shannon Neal. Why would you? He's clearly a key part of our future in terms of key position forwards. You've got Jeremy Cameron. You're not trading Jeremy Cameron for Christian Petracca. So we kind of struggle in terms of things that they really want. Melbourne's midfield, even without Christian Petracca, or one of Petracca or Oliver, is still really stacked. And so despite the fact that we have some incredible young players, I don't think they're going to be overly appealing either. Then you think about the Melbourne defence, and you go, okay, they've got Stephen May and Jake Lever, so key position defenders are not their thing. And I don't think you pay a premium in this market for small defenders, because you can get your midfielder turned half-back flank, a Max Holmes style, who's brilliant, obviously, and is in fierce competition for all Australian honours this year, and hope he does it. But I don't think you go clamoring for those sorts of players either. So then what is it that Geelong can offer? Draft picks will help. We'll have a first-round pick, but based on how things are going and if in the best case scenario, we end up achieving the ultimate success, it's going to be a late teens pick in some cases. I don't know how we get the deal done. I feel like a Christian Petracca demands 2 first-round picks. Well worth it, as far as I'm concerned, but he demands 2 first-round picks. So Geelong has to give up its one from this year, which, let's be kind of conservative. Let's maybe say it's, 13 or 14. So maybe we finish 4th or 5th or somewhere in that ballpark. But again, that could kind of fluctuate one way or the other, depending on how the season plays out. And then we can maybe offer a first from next year. But again, if you bring Christian Petracca into the list, you go, well, Geelong's probably a force to be reckoned with in season 2025 as well. And what's to say that they don't go on to win the premiership and we get pick 18, pick 19? Compromised drafts these days, maybe it becomes pick 20, 21. And so suddenly that doesn't feel overly appealing to Melbourne. Do you go down the pick and a player path? You get that first round pick, and then you get some other player who the club that feels ready made, that Melbourne feels like is a player who's ready to inject straight away. But again, what do we bring to the table that fulfills a need that Melbourne has, that isn't taking seriously away from our future? And again, I think Shannon Neal is a piece in that puzzle that Melbourne would probably be interested in, but is not one that Geelong would want to part with. And then those senior guys, your Jeremy Camerons, your Patrick Dangerfields, they're not going anywhere. And they're, Max Holmes, he's not going anywhere. He's just signed on. Today, we talk about defenders. We had Zach Guthrie and Jack Henry sign on. We've got Sam de Koning that's there. We've got a raft of high-quality young blokes. Tanner Bruin, Jai Clark. All these guys are building very, very nicely and are going to be a key part of the future going forward. But that's not going to be an easy one to transact on either. So I really struggle to see how Geelong can bundle a player into any deal that pries these two out of their club. Potentially. And financially, if Geelong can take on the entirety of their pay packets, that helps a bit, I suspect. The talk is that Clayton Oliver's getting $7 million across the duration of his contract, or thereabouts. Can we smooth that over a little bit? Can we take it all? Because if we can do that and Melbourne's not having to eat some of the cost akin to other transactions we've seen, Brodie Grundy's with Collingwood and those sorts of deals, then maybe that makes things a little bit easier. Maybe go a first and a second. And, I don't know, a younger player who the club likes in terms of future potential. But then there's all of this, and this is all built around two guns, admittedly. One who's absolutely the peak of his game, one who's had a pretty challenging year, pretty challenging 12 months, 24 months, thereabouts. You've got all of these pieces. And then you've got Bailey Smith as well, who seems to be signed, sealed, and delivered in a lot of ways. Who I think a lot of our eyes outside of the club believe it's Geelong now. Like that's the deal. It's done. So then how do you transact for Bailey Smith as well? It feels like too much. But there's little rumblings, there's little murmurings that Geelong's putting up a case for one of those two players. And I mean, what that would do for our midfield when you add class, like a Christian Petracca, like a Clayton Oliver, like a Bailey Smith, you add that on top of Tanner Bruin, Jai Clark, Tom Atkins, Max Holmes, Patrick Dangerfield, and there's a bunch of others. Tom Stewart as a midfielder these days. Imagine a midfield these days where you go into battle as Geelong and you've got Patrick Dangerfield, Tom Stewart, Christian Petracca slash Clayton Oliver lining up. You're shitting bricks if you're the opposition. You're not loving that as a prospect. And so it's in Geelong's interest to try and find a way to transact with one of these two players, Bailey Smith on top of it. But how is a really big and really difficult question. So what I'm going to ask you now, viewer, who stuck it out for the 13 minutes plus that we've been recording so far, let me know in the comments what you think. Should Geelong pursue that combination, any combination of Bailey Smith, Christian Petracca, Clayton Oliver? Who, if you could pick one, who would it be? And if it's Bailey Smith plus one of those two, how does Geelong get a deal done? Because I can see them getting 1 out of 3. And that one seems to be Bailey Smith. But how do you get 2? Especially if it's Christian Petracca. Let me know in the comments what you think. Check out all the content on the Hoops Crew. Check us out on YouTube. Continue to do so. Check us out on Patreon, where you can subscribe and get 1 free week of exclusive full access to all of the stuff that we do there. That is exclusive content. That is early access content. There's heaps there. Go check it all out. And that'd be awesome. Stick around for the cost of $5 or $6 for the entire month, and you'll get that same library of content delivered to your inbox as it goes live. That's going to be pretty sweet too. For socials, you can find me at Paul James Games. Check out the Hoops Crew there as well. And until next time, remain Geelong strong. Let us know what you think about these deals. Can they happen? Should they happen? How do we make it happen? Thanks a lot for watching. Remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you later.